Inspector General Horowitz, thank you so much, along with the rest of our witnesses, for being here today. While reading through your report, I couldn't help but notice how time and again concerns about the child separation policy were raised by government officials during the time, only to be dismissed by Attorney General Sessions and his top DOJ advisors. Officials reported up to Sessions and his top advisors that they could not track children. And again, this was during that time. They reported that resources were being stretched to the breaking point, and U.S. attorneys reported that they could not even answer basic questions in court about the children that were being separated. So I wanted to know, Inspector General Horowitz, was it your finding that Attorney General Sessions and his top advisors pushed to continue all prosecutions under the zero tolerance policy and effectively kind of disregarded these concerns?
Yeah, so what we found was that this understanding that somehow this could happen in a day, prosecutions are within 72 hours, became readily apparent, as you indicated, Congresswoman. Once it was implemented on May 4th going forward, reports kept coming in through U.S. attorneys, meetings that were occurring, that this was a problem, that prosecutions weren't happening in that time period. And so that misunderstanding became clear, and that HHS and DHS were having trouble reuniting the adults once they were prosecuted and sent back with the child. That information became apparent, and it was even highlighted, frankly, beforehand, again, as we talked about earlier with the El Paso initiative, which the department got a briefing on in late December, and had they asked, these same problems were readily apparent from that initiative.
Mm-hmm. I was also struck that when your office interviewed these former DOJ officials, they all tried to deflect blame. And when asked about the rampant difficulties that other agencies had in tracking and reunifying families, the former Deputy Attorney General Rosenstein said, quote, "That's an issue that they should have flagged. I just don't see that as a DOJ equity." Now, when top DOJ officials learned that children were being held by Border Patrol for longer than 72 hours, which was violating federal law, did DOJ stop the zero tolerance policy?
So as all of this was occurring in May and these reports were coming up, there was no change in the zero tolerance policy. It only ended on June 20 with the executive order being issued that ceased it to be allowed to go forward.
So they didn't. They knew that these children were being held longer than 72 hours. They knew that federal law was being violated in the detention of these children, and they continued the policy anyway. In fact, it seems Sessions dismissed this issue by pushing for even faster prosecutions, saying, quote, "We are in post 9/11 mode." The Deputy Attorney General Rosenstein claimed that he would have supported the U.S. attorneys if they said they would no longer prosecute all these parents. But Mr. Rosenstein also noted that AG Sessions was, quote, "adamant that this program needs to continue," right?
That's correct. That's what we were told, and that even as information started coming in from the U.S. attorneys, that there was this problem with unifying children who had gone to HHS. That was the response they heard from the department leadership, that this was a problem that was not going to be addressed through changing the policy. And after all, if the department had not taken the cases, obviously the separations wouldn't have occurred. It was the department that had to accept the cases for prosecution.
So I think that really gets to the heart of this matter, which is that this was a deliberate choice. Whether or not, were these DOJ officials really powerless to stop these separations? It seems that they weren't. Inspector General Horowitz, what would have happened if AG Sessions and the Justice Department simply said that they were going to return to prior longstanding policy and no longer prosecute all arriving parents?
If the department stopped agreeing to accept these adults for prosecution, they wouldn't obviously have been transferred to the Marshal Service. They would have remained in DHS custody with the child that they were traveling. The child then wouldn't have been separated by being sent to HHS because they wouldn't have been unaccompanied. And so the separations would have stopped.
Thank you. Thank you very much.